Originally released on the Nintendo 64 at the tail end of 1997 in Japan and early 1998 in America and Europe, Yoshi's story set out to do something a little different to distance itself from the mainline Mario series. The image of Yoshi really came into its own here, with many future Nintendo titles looking back to Yoshi's story for inspiration on how to best represent the character. The Yoshi have been living a happy life thanks to the fruit from the Super Happy Tree, which leads Baby Bowser to become envious, causing him to cast a spell that transforms their entire island into a pop-up storybook. As if that wasn't enough, he also steals the Super Happy Tree for himself. This sent Yoshi's island into gloom and misery. Luckily, 6 baby Yoshi were yet to hatch and managed to be protected from the spell. Once they hatched, they became confused at the lack of happiness. Then they all decided to become super happy to spoil Baby Bowser's plan for island-wide depression, and set out to get the Super Happy Tree back using the trail of fruit that was left behind on the island. It's a cute plot that's not meant to be thought about too hard, and the actual journey itself takes more of a focus anyway. After each stage, the game will give a short narration on what happened in the level, and at the end of a playthrough, it pieces all of them together, creating your own personalised story from your chosen path. It's not very deep, but I think it's really clever how this feature ties in with the pop-up book plot and the game's title, while also making good use of the pick-your-own-route aspect. Yoshi has a new design this time around, making them more humanoid. I like this change, not only because it looks better and makes them more compact, which is ideal for platforming, but it also makes sense as they're no longer being depicted as a rideable mount, giving the character a more individual focus. One of the first things I think anyone will notice about Yoshi's story is how striking the visuals are. Straight away you're faced with this gorgeous watercolour style title screen, which is then revealed to be a pop-up book cover, opening to some eye-catching sprite work. It sets the precedent that this game is going to be a feast for the eyes, and it doesn't disappoint. The level select also follows this pop-up theme, as well as level transitions mimicking a turning page. The select Yoshi screen with all the different coloured Yoshi plodding about in what looks like the inside of a dimly lit wooden box is one of my favourite character select screens in recent memory. Before you even enter a stage, there's so much style and personality unique to Yoshi's story that it's hard not to be won over within the first 10 minutes. The animations on Yoshi are very bouncy and expressive. Different emotions are represented, like Yoshi being happy after eating their favourite fruit, or expressing intimidation by growling at enemies and bosses when close. The attention to detail is great and really brings the character to life. The majority of the levels not only have their own visual theme, but often come with their own art style as well. Treasure Hunt has the environment completely made out of vibrant cardboard with fragile symbols, text, and seams still visible. Poochie and Nippy is a comfy snow level made out of clay. The trees and mountains in the background really sell the effect. Jungle Puddle is entirely made out of highly detailed inflatables, with their scenes only being complemented with the impressive water reflections. Jelly Pipe is a grimy sewer-themed level with surreal newspaper cutouts plastered over everything. Piranha Grove has a one-off theme of a forest completely taken over by piranha plants. The dark atmosphere, winding branches in the background, and sea of thorns in the foreground look spectacular. Even the enemies throughout the game share the same level of quality and individuality. Just looking at a few of these examples, it's clear to see that they went above and beyond in this department, and it really paid off. Playing through this game would be worth it for the refreshing presentation alone. Yoshi is controlled with the analog stick, allowing for varying degrees of movement, and their top speed is pretty fast. Being able to use the tongue at any angle works well with the stick, and the ability to sweep it while it's still active is a big reason to why it feels so good to use. The speed in which you can quickly eat fruit and enemies also feels super satisfying. Swallowing enemies or collecting eggs from egg blocks will give you ammo for throws, which can be used anywhere on screen, making for a useful ranged attack. The regular jump is very generous, and the iconic flutter mechanic only adds to that. The flutter temporarily grants you added air control, and once it's finished, you're locked back into the more rigid arc, which can catch you off guard if you're not focused. There's also the ground pound that can be performed out of the jump, and the sniff, which is used to find secrets. Swimming plays a small role in the game, and it plays pretty well. Yoshi simply moves in the direction you're holding, allowing for accurate control. I really enjoy how Yoshi controls overall, and there's enough depth to where you can feel yourself improving as you become more accustomed to the movement and tools, eventually pulling off various maneuvers and tricks that would have seemed out of the question at the start of the game. There are a handful of very short-lived gimmick sections sprinkled throughout with the windsurfing, umbrella drops, and helicopter platforms, all which control as well as they should and don't overstay their welcome. Instead of the goal being to simply reach the end of a course like previous Mario side-scrollers, here the aim is to collect 30 fruit. The level design varies from linear to semi-linear, with the latter often having multiple paths. Even the more traditional levels have a big focus on verticality, making good use of multiple different levels of height. Stages loop around on themselves with 4 different quick travel checkpoints scattered in between. There's no time limit and no rush. You're free to explore the stages and collect fruit as you go. How you progress through each world is also a bit different. There are 6 worlds, each one with 4 levels. Completing a level moves you straight onto the next world. Because of how you can only choose 1 level per world, you'll have to beat the game 4 separate times if you want to experience all 24 levels. 6 different levels per playthrough. Here's the route I went with. I thought this would be the best way to play through the entire game, as I assumed the deeper you are in a world, the more difficult it would be, which was more or less the case. I do like how this game is laid out for how unusual it is. The idea that you can boot it up and play through it using the route of your choice feels very novel and helps the game stand out among other 2D platformers of its time. Each of these 6 different coloured Yoshi have their own favourite fruit, which will heal 3 HP instead of the standard 1. A lucky fruit that can fully heal is also chosen at the start of each playthrough, adding a small benefit to picking certain Yoshi so you can make use of both kinds of bonus fruit. The Yoshi also represent your lives. If you die, your Yoshi of choice will be taken away by Baby Bowser's minions in an unsettling kidnapping sequence. White Shy Guys can be found who can rescue your fallen Yoshi, once caught in the character select screen that is. They are rare however, so you really do need to be careful, as losing your entire team results in a game over. I really appreciate the thought that went into contextualizing the live system. Melons are the highest quality fruit in the game. There's 30 in each stage, and they need to be collected exclusively if you want the perfect score. They can be found out in the open like regular fruit, or hidden behind puzzles, mini-games, and secrets. It's a nice addition to add extra challenge for those who are willing, and the mini-games are still worth doing, even if you're not going for the perfect score, as they can quickly bulk up your fruit count towards the desired 30. Most of the time a stage will have one core idea that it's based around, and there's a lot of different concepts. Cloud cruising has you tasked with ascending upwards with these bizarre snake-like platforms that are controlled by your own jumps. The idea then escalates into riding on the back of a dragon, avoiding enemies and collecting fruit as it rides around in the sky. Blarg's Boiler is a lethal lava-filled cave where you'll be platforming on loose bones, some which need to be intentionally sunk further to collect certain fruits and hearts, while also bringing you closer to danger. The aforementioned Piranha Grove being one of the more difficult stages is a fully fleshed out platforming level, full of bottomless pits, moving platforms, engaging enemy placement, and big balls. Frustration features a giant ring that's powered by your own running speed. It's a pretty exciting one-off, and the inclusion of the speedrun minigame later on in the stage just makes perfect sense. These are just a few examples that stuck out to me, and there's plenty more. The game does a great job at keeping the pace going by making sure no 2 stages feel the same, which is enhanced by the good cast of enemies who all serve their own role and reside in their own levels. While I do enjoy the bulk of the gameplay, there's an admittedly small amount of enemies, mechanics, and issues I wasn't too happy with. The frequently used red exclamation mark grapple points are a neat idea, but the implementation feels stiff and rigid. I think they could have benefited from using more of your current momentum. The road-blocking elephant in the first stage that requires ground pounding and then a high jump feels like a pointless waste of time and doesn't add anything to the level. If they wanted to demonstrate the use of the ground pound and flutter jump, there are definitely better ways to do this. The Fly Guy and Thwomp setup used in a few of the castle stages is an admirable idea conceptually, but I found most of my interactions with them to be an irritating pacebreaker. I also experienced some previously hidden hearts despawning after going off screen, which was a nightmare during a particular on-rail section. These are all minor issues however, and didn't have a big impact on my enjoyment of the game. The soundtrack, much like the game itself, stands out in its own way and fits the overall presentation perfectly. The sound effects also deserve a mention as they bring a lot of personality to the game. The Yoshi will hum along to themselves when left idle and will even sound concerned looking at the player when left alone. Each different coloured Yoshi also has a slightly different voice pitch, which is just another small detail used on top of the colours and favourite fruit to make each one feel as distinct as possible. The bosses are extremely easy, but most of them have their own reasons for being enjoyable. Cloud and Candy bounces around the arena becoming smaller and more agile with every piece you can swallow. The fast eating speed means this boss can be taken down extremely quickly, which does feel very satisfying. Cloudjin has a cool design, but his spike balls and fire breath aren't too difficult to avoid, and overall he seems quite trivial, just requiring 3 egg shots to be defeated. Don Bongo is one of the better bosses in the game. He paces back and forth creating hazards that must be avoided while you need to throw eggs at his lips, which grow bigger in size with every hit. Inviso is my pick for weakest boss in the game. He uses invisibility to try and sneak up on you to cause contact damage. He's not difficult to locate and just requires 3 eggs to defeat. Slug is a unique case, being an optional boss inside a stage, and can only be defeated with the fireworks that come from egg throws, as direct hits won't work. It didn't take long for me to figure out after reading the hint, but I do appreciate that little bit of extra depth. Baby Bowser's intended method of using bombs to create falling spikes to damage him in the first phase would have made it the best boss in the game, but by my second encounter I realised how incredibly easy it is to cheese him by hitting him directly with the egg fireworks. It's also made even easier by making use of the heart on the tree that gives you infinite eggs temporarily. As you need to do this fight 4 times, it is nice that there's an option to get through it quickly, although I think a better solution to combat the tedium would have been to have 4 different variations of the fight depending on which stage you choose in the final world. When I first started Yoshi's story, I was a bit confused, but I eventually came to understand what it was going for and learned to appreciate it for the strange, lovable game that it is. The expressive presentation is extremely distinct, and it still managed to leave a lasting impression on me 20 plus years later. The unique gameplay loop and impressive variety kept me fully invested throughout, and the overall experience felt very memorable to me, so I don't think I'll be forgetting the role I played in these stories anytime soon.